Hello and welcome to episode 5. I'm your host, Annie Zomaya, lover of pop culture, entertainment, and 100% human creativity. This is Creative Mode. Today, I want to talk about friction. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, friction is a force that resists the sliding or rolling of one solid object over another. Friction may be beneficial, but it also presents a great measure of opposition to motion. Why are we talking about friction? This is not a science podcast, and I'm not here to give you a physics lesson. However, I have been seeing the word friction in online spaces in the context of AI tools and workflows. And I think it's really interesting. So I kind of want to talk about it today and what that means for us as creative people. I first encountered the word friction used in this context on a LinkedIn post where someone had moved their website, they had built it themselves, but they were having an issue with getting people to find a link. So they put in the comments, here's the direct link. That's the analog friction for you. Analog friction. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I felt like I just kept coming across this word friction. And it was usually talking about making something easier or more difficult. And I noticed that a lot of AI tools are using friction in their marketing language, saying that they are designed to reduce friction or eliminate friction so that you can get a faster output. It's really about friction versus speed. At least that's the way that it seems to me in what I've seen so far. So at its core, friction is resistance. And this can show up in a lot of ways. So it can be anything that presents an obstacle or makes it harder for you to reach your goal, whatever that goal is, whether it's creative, professional, personal, whatever it may be. Friction is something that is in opposition to motion towards that goal. However, friction is not inherently good or bad. We don't need to eliminate it entirely. What we need to do is find the level that works for us. And this is going to be different based on how your brain works, what your process looks like, what your goals are, what the learning curve is. There is no one size fits all process. And so I think it warrants a deeper conversation about what this looks like in practice. Any creative pursuit is going to be met with resistance. I'm feeling it today. Every time I sit down to record an episode, I feel resistance. I think that maybe the topic I want to talk about isn't worth talking about. I should scrap it and start over. I feel it every single time, but I push past it because I've just come to know it as part of the process. And I just need to get through it and get to the other side so that I can keep on going. When does friction become a problem? Well, an example of too much friction would be artist's block. There's so much resistance, whether it's coming from inside yourself or external. Something is stopping you from getting words on the page, getting some work done, and moving from step 1 to step 2. An example of too little friction would be aimlessness, boredom, scrolling, and not getting up and working on your project at all. We need a little bit of friction. It's what allows us to walk on the earth without sliding all over the place. It's what allows cars to run and tires to have traction. We need friction. And even in the literal sense, friction generates heat, and heat is energy. So there is an energetic output with friction. The other thing I want to acknowledge is friction represents conflict, and every good story has conflict. Think of your favorite story, whether it's a book, a movie, a TV show, a video game. If there was no conflict, there wouldn't be a story. There would be no hook. There would be no stakes. There would be nothing to keep you motivated to find out what happens, right? So conflict is not bad. Again, it's about finding the level that works best for us and our process and the goals that we have. Another example is I have been playing the video game Fallout New Vegas. I've been trying to play video games so that I can play with my friends, but I've been having a really hard time with the controls and learning how to work the camera while also moving my character, while also shooting an objective. And it's been kind of difficult, and they suggested that this would be a good entry-level game for me to learn with. And so I started playing it, but I still had a lot of resistance and I was getting frustrated. I actually got a headache from the camera motion and looking at the screen for too long. But once I got over that, I took a break and I came back, and then I realized, okay, I've picked up a little bit more muscle memory than I realized, and things were getting a little bit easier. And I was able to enjoy the story. So I'm still working on the game. I don't know what happens, but I did get to a point where I was like, okay, Yeah, there was it took a little bit of time to get used to this and get into a flow, but I'm here now. I'm glad I did it. And now I get to enjoy this video game and the story. And there's just enough conflict in the game to keep it interesting and to give me a challenge. But the difficulty level is on, I believe I have it on easy mode. So that reduces a little bit of friction so that I can still get some forward momentum. That's a real world example of what reducing friction can look like without eliminating it entirely. Let's talk about these AI tools and this whole marketing buzz about eliminating friction so that you have a faster output. Google has a tool that is actually called Flow, and it is for filmmaking. It's an AI generative tool for filmmaking, and I found a commentary article about it, and I'm going to read a little bit of that. This is from an article by Create Repeat, and it's called The Value of Friction in Creativity. I'm suspicious that these tools from Google are not meant to be tools at all. With every announcement, it seems as if the goal is less about creative control and more about getting closer and closer to one big red content button that will churn out exactly what you want to see when you want to see it, just to algorithmically generate something new the moment you get bored. No effort, no trying, no friction. Just the thing the algorithm thinks is best for you then and there. I actually watched the promo for Google's Flow, and it has that uncanny valley effect of when you see AI art, you know it. I can just tell that this was AI generated. Do you know what I mean? There was no human input. There's no human fingerprint on what comes out the other side. And so it really is just about generating content or churning an output so that you have something to feed an algorithm. To me, that's not art. I've talked about this. You know my opinion on it. I really value the creative process and how unique it is to every individual. And that's where we get stories that are worth telling, art that is worth sharing, things that are worth experiencing, because there was resistance. There was struggle and challenge and overcoming and problem solving that went into creating this piece of art. That's what makes it fun. That's what gives it a soul. That's what gives it value to me. Another interesting story that I came across was in an article by Lawrence Yeo called Frictionless Creativity. And he starts the article off by telling the story of a 17th century artist named Zhu Da, who would start his paintings by getting drunk, dipping his ponytail into ink, and then splashing it along a canvas. And then he would come back the next day when he was sober, and he would look for the patterns and connect the lines and create a beautiful painting that was a cohesive picture. That is a really fun example of a way to reduce friction and create an on-ramp. I don't suggest that anyone go out and get drunk. Please don't take that from this. But this was in the 17th century. There was no digital tool. There was no AI to reduce friction. It was just having a drink and getting messy and then coming back to it and finding the art in what you created and refining it so that you do have this finished product. I thought that was a really interesting story. And so Lawrence Yeo writes, starting is characterized by friction, whereas the rest is characterized by fluidity. The start of any creative endeavor is full of doubt and skepticism, which frames everything from the perspective of a rational mind. You tend to overanalyze things and try to figure out what you're trying to convey before you put a single word or brushstroke down. Flow states emerge when you've moved past the friction of the start and entered a domain where you believe in the beauty of what you're creating. You don't judge yourself for what you're making, and you're not questioning the way you're putting things together. You're just doing what you're there to do and accepting the process each step of the way. That echoes what I talked about in the episode about perfectionism, how sometimes you just have to use stream of consciousness to get your ideas from your head to your medium without thinking about it. That's getting something on paper. That way you have something to work with. You have an idea, a very raw, rough, messy idea, and then you can come back to it and refine it. So we don't need to rely on artificial intelligence to reduce friction for us to create something worth sharing. And I feel like that's what the tech companies want us to think. But remember, like I said in the last episode, the internet does not belong to tech companies. It belongs to us. We are the pioneers of the age of AI, and we get to shape the land. We get to choose what this is going to look like and what the experience is going to be for us. Yes, friction is an obstacle. Yes, friction creates conflict. Sometimes there's too much and we need to reduce it so that we can move forward. Here's how I do it. Every time I have an idea for an episode, I get out my sketch pad and some markers, just Crayola washable markers, and I sit down and I create a mind map. So I write down the main idea, draw a circle around it, write down sub ideas, things that I want to talk about, and then I just keep going, getting smaller and smaller, and then finding the patterns and connecting them. So similar to the artist Zuda with his painting, except I'm not getting drunk and I'm not using a ponytail. I'm just using my brain, a sketch pad, and some markers. And it's a really fun way to use my physical environment, the space on the paper, and being able to draw lines and doodle and sketch and make it messy. And then I can take that and put it into my Word document where I create more of a linear outline that's easier for me to actually read when it's time to sit down and record. But that is just one example, and it costs whatever the materials are. So however much I paid for this art pad, probably a couple of dollars, and the markers, I don't know, they've been sitting in my closet forever. Just something that I had on hand. And so that's just a way that I use analog tools to reduce friction for myself. Yes, I could go to ChatGPT and ask it to give me ideas for a podcast episode. That would be very easy. That would be almost no friction. But that takes the fun out of it for me. That's not fulfilling. And I think that comes at a cost. Like I said in the very first episode, if we become over-reliant on AI tools for creative output, our imaginations are going to get lazy and atrophy, and then they're not going to be good anymore, and we're all going to end up like WALL-E, where everyone's living in a very low friction future, riding around on their hovercrafts and drinking extra, extra large sodas. That's not the future I want to see. We need friction, we need conflict, we need heat so that we can find something that's worth our time, that's worth our energy, worth doing and sharing so that we can shape the world before us. I just get annoyed when I see this word friction. Again, it's not good or bad. I've just noticed that it's being used in this context. It's giving corporate, it's giving jargon, it's giving out of touch. This does not just apply to art. This can apply to anything that involves a learning curve. It could be starting a business. It could be working on your relationship. It could be looking for a new job. Anything that involves a learning curve that is met with resistance in the beginning, pretty much anything worth doing is going to give you a little bit of friction. Do your mental and emotional calisthenics so that you can meet friction, say, okay, this is what I'm up against. How can I build an on-ramp so that I can get past this and get some momentum? How can I use it to my advantage? What questions is it provoking in me? What challenges is it presenting that are going to deepen my thought so that what I'm creating or what I'm trying to achieve turns out even better than I originally planned? Friction is a tool. Too much of anything is bad. Too little of anything is bad. Friction in itself is neither. Friction is neutral. It's just a force. Use it to your advantage. Finally, I want to leave you with this quote by a photographer that I found on Substack. They go by Light and Storytelling, and this article was called Designing Friction in an Age of Frictionless Creativity. The sky in the photograph is perfect, and it took one click. The hike that made the picture possible took 3 hours in the dark. Viewers will never know about either. However, only one of those efforts shaped the way the photographer viewed the scene before them. In an era of effortless tools, the question isn't how hard you worked, it's what you chose to struggle with. I'll leave you with that for this week. Text this episode to a friend who could use a little bit of momentum. Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you next week.